Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all, so hopefully find this one interesting. This movie is a crime film from Estonia, Estonian language English subs, released in the year 1993, directed by Ilkka Laturi, and this film is called City Unplugged. So City Unplugged is about Estonia. It's recently become a free state, with the Soviet Union have collapsed, and now Estonia are building a better future for themselves. And the future is a result of some gold that they smuggled out of Estonia and hid in Paris until the Soviet Union collapsed, and now they want to get that gold back. And so they're planning on transporting it back. There's a lot of fanfare, that's all over the news, but unfortunately for the country there are some gangsters that actually want the gold for themselves. And in order to get that gold, they have an elaborate sort of plan that is going to involve Tallinn, the capital city of Estonia, going into a blackout. So in a blackout, they won't have the security, they won't be able to stop them, and so these gangsters believe that this is a foolproof plan. Although it's extravagant, it's going to work. In order for this plan to work, they have to get the services of an ex-criminal. Now this ex-criminal is leading a straight and narrow life now. He has a wife that's expecting at any minute, and so he has everything to live for. But unfortunately, the ghosts of his past come back to haunt him, and now he's brought back into the criminal world that he thought he'd left once and for all. So unfortunately, as the situation progresses, more complications arise that changes the perspective of absolutely everything. And so things are going to spiral out of control. What happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on City Unplugged. I had no idea what to expect with this film. I never heard anyone talk about it, and so I was going in there with a fresh slate and every opportunity that this movie would impress me. Now the reason why I wanted to see this film is that it did look very interesting. The overall story sounded very extravagant and intriguing, but the reason why I wanted to see is that I've seen a handful of Estonian movies recently that have actually impressed me. And so going back to the older Estonian movies, I thought, okay, what is this going to produce? This is a film that was very important because the Soviet Union recently collapsed. Estonia had churned out a few films before this one, but this was the first movie that I actually seen in the new Estonia. And so this is a history lesson. This is a lesson of foreign cinema, and in this part of the world I'm a fan of this type of cinema, Soviet cinema. And so what was Estonia going to produce? Was it going to be like the modern day Estonian films, or was it going to be a letdown? And so with expectations at a bare minimum and the excitement levels through the roof, I was hoping that this is going to be an absolutely fantastic experience that I would happily go and recommend to everyone out there. And after watching this film, I will say that although I wasn't overly excited to go and recommend this film to everyone, I was still happy that I spent the time and effort to actually watch this movie, because as I said, it is a very significant film in Estonia's film history. This is a movie where I thought as though it not only established a very fun sort of story, but it had an underlying sort of commentary on the harsh Soviet lifestyle. So this is a film that takes place majority in black and white. And that black and white, it felt like it was constrained. It felt like it was under pressure. It felt like something was holding it back, and that was the Soviet Union. Ruled with an iron fist, and the overall black and white quality to this movie gave it that iron rule sort of feeling to it. That you're watching this movie unfold, it's a lot of fun, but something is actually dreaded. Something is holding it back. Something underneath is simmering. And I thought that was really well done, because the last half of this film, it goes into colour. Now when it goes into colour, for some strange reason, I felt a sense of liberation. I felt a sense, alright, I am actually feeling a lot better about things. And so the colour and the black and white clashing together was the symbolisation of the fall of the Soviet Union, and I thought that was by far the best part of this movie. It actually made me think. I wasn't expecting to think, because it was, as I said, that outlandish fun film, but underneath I thought as though it had a stronger meaning, and that meaning actually worked fairly well. So if you are after films that have a historic significance, then this is a movie I would definitely recommend. Apart from that significance, I will say that the overall story felt like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, that caricature sort of far out cartoonish fun. The characters are larger than life. The gangsters, when they get into talking about what they're going to do, I thought the plan was so extravagant, and there were so many possibilities for things to go wrong, but they thought as though they had it all under control. And so the comedy of errors start coming into the film. I actually thought it was fairly funny. The very black humour, it is very deadpan humour, so if you don't really go for that type of comedy, then this is a film you probably won't find funny. But I thought certain situations actually worked pretty well, and it translated well with each other, and I thought as though the chemistry was actually there between these criminals. It was a group of criminals, as I said, they're very cartoonish, they're very caricature. It doesn't really allow you to relate to them on a personal level, which can be an issue, I'll go into a little bit later, but it's just had that bonkers sort of feel to it. It's a very, very quirky film, a very different film. So if you like movies that are more traditional, then City Unplugged is definitely not for you. It has a very outlandish sort of storyline, and everything about the film is complementary to that. I thought as though it was very consistent, the tone was very consistent, knew exactly where it wanted to go. But as I said, that underlying sort of message on the Soviet Union was what provided the interest that I had from start to finish. So there are some set pieces I thought were fairly well done. There were some moments that I thought were fairly suspenseful, and the end of the film I thought, okay, well, it's a little bit silly, but as I said, it matched the overall consistency of the film. And so it's a movie that has a moment in history where it will stand the test of time as far as a cult classic sort of film. Not many people hear about this movie, but for those of you who actually know about it, you will know that it has a little following, and I can understand that because of the overall feel to it. It's a very, very different film, and as I said, it can work in its favour, but it can also work against it. Now, the reason why it works against it is because I felt as though I had that distance between myself and the plight of this main character. When he's going through these things, I didn't really care about what was going on because I never felt as though they were human. I always felt as though I was watching a film instead of actually experiencing a film. So the overall suspenseful moments, yes, there are some certain set pieces that hit you on a situational sense, but overall, as far as me connecting on a human sense, as far as the suspense is concerned, and that level of fear, I thought it was non-existent. And so that was unfortunately the issue I had with the movie, which is an issue I have with other movies similar to this movie, where it's not taking itself seriously enough to really portray the overall mood that it wants. But pushing that aside, it doesn't go out of its way to hit you with Oscar-worthy script, Oscar-worthy acting. It's having fun doing what it's doing, but unfortunately I thought as though there was a film underneath all of the silliness that actually could have made it a lot better. I'll say that some of the editing here and there was a little bit off. I thought it was very jarring, and so again I couldn't get myself fully immersed into the overall situation that was taking place in front of me, and I thought as though some of the continuity was a little bit inconsistent. I thought as though it could have used a little bit more fluency, it could have used it being a little bit more sharp in its cutting, and it actually would have progressed and would have had a much stronger continuity. And so pushing those negatives aside, it's still not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. As I said, if you are after a history lesson in this particular Estonia, this particular country of Estonia, then City Unplugged is definitely one I would check out. It is there are worse ways to spend an hour and a half of your time, and so if it sounds like your kind of thing, go out there and see this film. I'm going to give City Unplugged 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, you watching movies, and I'll see you later.